Hey everyone, welcome, good morning, good evening. I hope all of you are doing great today. I'm Nishagni and this is Nishagni Tarot, where you receive inspired insights to create an empowered life. So, welcome. I hope you're all having a fabulous time and your day is going great. So, in today's video, I thought I'd talk to you about a magical practice, craft that is very famous around the world, which has a lot of practitioners, but which unfortunately sort of excludes indigenous practices, in the sense that indigenous people don't know how to practice their own indigenous practices, rather, they adopt other people's practices. Okay, so let's get started. I'm sure you're really curious about what I'm talking about. Maybe you're slightly confused, but that's okay. That's why you're here. So let's get started. So, welcome back. What practice am I talking about? Now, if you have followed my channel, then you know that I'm a tarot reader, oracle reader, and I am a magical practitioner. Now, one of my magical practices is basically based in folk magic, and that's what I want to talk about today. So, what exactly is folk magic? Now, folk magic, and I'm gonna talk about this in a very simplistic term, is the magical practice that is practiced by a particular community. So, it is the magic of the folks, right? It could be your folk, it could be my folk. So, essentially, it is a localized practice which is performed by a group of people who belong to a single community or the same community, and who share values, who share traditions, and who share experiences and beliefs, and their magical practices stem from these common beliefs and common shared values, common cultural experiences that they've had. So, for example, I'm in India, so if I'm practicing folk magic, my magic is based in Indian beliefs. Since I'm a practicing Hindu, my magical practice is based in Hindu beliefs, which is essentially any magic that has been referred to in my Indian philosophical and magical texts, and specifically Hindu magical and philosophical texts. Now, when it comes to folk magic, every single culture has their own specific folk magic. Now, folk magic, if you consider a lot of practitioners who may be very prominent magical personalities, either on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or any other social platform, or even in covens, you will notice that a lot of them come from either North America or from Europe. And beginner practitioners, especially those who are called to perform folk magic or called to perform these localized practices, often they don't get resources that easily, and so they look towards these magical personalities who are famous on social media for instruction, for support, for guidance, for knowledge. And that's fine, that's perfectly fine. Now, the problem that happens at this time is that since a lot of magical folks are from North America or from Europe, they are most likely to be exposed to traditions of folk magic that come from their countries. So, a North American, for example, a magical practitioner who's based in the United States would know about folk practices that are unique to the United States. Even specifically, if let's say there's a folk practitioner who is from Scotland, let's say from Edinburgh, and they've grown up in Edinburgh, it is very likely that they are more aware and attuned to the folk magic practices of Edinburgh as opposed to, say, London, right? Although it's in Europe, although it's in UK, they're still two different places. Now, when this magical practitioner would create resources and they would put it out online for other people to consume, they would do so from their own perspective, and which is fine, and that's completely fair. And if the beginner practitioner is from Edinburgh or is from Europe or is from the United States, relevant to whoever the content creator is, when they learn these practices, they gain significant value because they are actually living in the community which used to practice these these magical practices, these magical rituals, these spell works, right? And they get a lot of value. But what if the beginner is from another country outside of the United States or outside of Europe? Like I was, like I am, in fact. So I am from India, and so when I wanted to start my magical journey, I didn't have any access to proper information from within India. I didn't know anything. All I knew is that I was really called to find out about magic, especially about earth-based practices. That is, which allow me to align myself with Mother Nature, which allow me to align myself to the seasonal shifts of, how the earth evolves, which allowed me to get in touch with my plant spirits, animal spirits, ancestors, my deities, and my local energies. And when I started studying magic, all I could see was practitioners from other countries, from other continents, and half of the information they provided was absolutely of no use to me. First off, I couldn't find the ingredients that they mentioned. Even if I could, they were so exorbitantly priced because they all had to be imported from the United States or Europe. So it became infeasible for me to practice magic. That's when I decided, okay, you know what? While I have got some value from this content, this isn't going to work for me, so I need to do research on my own. And that's when I discovered the magic of folk magic. And I found that folk magic is so much easier to practice and so much more emotionally and spiritually fulfilling if I connected with my own Indian roots and my own Hindu roots. And that's what this video is all about, where I give you some pointers about how you can find the resources you need to practice folk magic your way, according to your lineage, according to your ancestry, and according to your culture. And even according to your religious practices, if your religion is open to these practices. So that's what this video is about. Welcome back. So one of the key questions that a lot of beginners asked, and which I had asked myself when I was starting my magical journey, was where on earth can I find the information I need to practice magic, let alone folk magic? And once I started my research, I found out how easy it is to get access to magic, because magic is everywhere. Believe it or not, you are experiencing a magical moment right now. And I'm not just saying that because you're watching my video and it's super magical and amazing, because it is, but I'm also saying it because life and our ancestral practices, our regional practices are magic in themselves. A lot of things that we do is magic. And because I'm based in India, I am going to be leaning a lot more towards Indian and South Asian references, because ultimately my aim is to help my South Asian Desi folks who want to practice magic to have some resources available for them, which kind of localizes their magical practice and allows them to tap into their roots. So please bear with me, foreign audiences. But I think these tips will definitely help you out, because these are just general guidance of where you can find information. So, for example, like I said, living is magical. Now, if you are from an Indian household, or if you live in India, you may have seen something called a rangoli design, or rangoli, which is done in front of many houses. Now, what is rangoli? Apart from being an aesthetically beautiful design, a rangoli has a specific purpose. It is essentially what Western practitioners call a sigil. Now, a sigil is any design that contains a specific intention and which is created to activate that intention. So for example, if I create a design for protection for myself, let's say I'm traveling and I create a design for protection, I can carry the drawing in a note in my pocket, or I can draw it on my hand and I can go. Essentially, what I'm doing is I am encapsulating my idea for protection in that design, so that when it is with me or on me, the magical energies of the universe will activate the design and I will be protected, energetically protected and physically protected. Similarly, rangoli designs, because there are so many different shapes used, triangles, circles, squares, lots of different shapes are used. Each combination of these designs, of these geometrical shapes, creates a design that has a unique purpose. Now, in ancient days in India, each of these designs had a specific purpose. Now, even today, if you were to have, let's say, a marriage ceremony or some other sort of ritualistic puja conducted in your house, your priests will create a rangoli of a specific design, of a specific color, using specific flowers, fruits, etc., that they used to decorate this design. And that is essentially because every single element used in the rangoli serves a specific purpose. Some of them can be for protection, some of them can be to soothe and satiate the ancestral or land spirits. Some could be for inviting prosperity, some could be for getting rid of the negative eye or the evil eye of, let's say, neighbors and relatives and so on. So everything has a specific purpose. Now, the whole point of me giving you this example is that rangoli is an example of folk magic. And when I was doing my research, and when I realized that folk magic was right in front of me, it was right within my fingertips, all I had to reach out and touch it, my life transformed. And that's what I want to do for you today. I want to give you that foothold that you need to go out and explore your personal magical practice, your personal heritage, and your personal folk magic, so that you don't have to depend on the instructions of someone from another country unless you absolutely want to, but instead you can tap into your own inner ancestral energy, your own land spirits, and you can get the maximum potential out of your magical abilities. So in our next section, we will look at how you can practice folk magic and where you can get the resources from. Welcome back. So tip 1, childhood stories. Now, many of us have grown up in environments where we have someone, maybe an elder, this could be a family member, let's say a parent or a grandparent or a great-grandparent, or maybe even an uncle and an aunt, who has a lot of information about the stories that they received as children from their ancestors. Now, when you were a child, it is possible that your elders shared this information in the form of stories. It could be bedtime stories, it could be stories that they told you to get you to eat. I remember as a child, when I would be a fussy eater, my mom or my grandparents would tell me these amazing stories that they had heard from their grandparents and from their relatives, and then I would be so enthralled by these stories, which were usually folk tales that were orally presented. Many of these did not have written representation, because these were orally shared stories that came from generations upon generations being modified and being mixed and matched and just evolving at its own magical pace. And I was so enthralled with these stories that I would not even pay attention to the food, and I would just mechanically eat whatever my mom put in my mouth, because I was, young, and I was really involved in this magical story that my elders were telling me. And these stories might just seem like childhood stories, but if you look back upon them, you will realize that it contains a lot of magical, wisdom. It contains a lot of spiritual knowledge. It contains a lot of philosophical growth. So one thing that you can do if you want to practice folk magic is to go back to these childhood stories. If your elders are still in your lives, please consult them and ask them to repeat these stories and note them down. Either write them down or record them on your phone, so you can have a record of these stories. Then when you're free, you can actually analyze these stories, break them apart, identify if there is a specific ritual or a spell that's mentioned, or just try to distill what the values of this story are. Does it talk about a mythological creature? Does it talk about a deity? And then you can go from there. This story will be the doorway that will lead you to another world, where you can actually research so many different aspects of the story, find other relevant deities, other relevant animal spirits, other relevant practices, and then that's where you can go down there from the rabbit hole. So childhood stories are a great way to start folk magic. Tip 2. All right. So we're done with childhood stories, but there is one more thing that your family may have passed on to you, and that is family proverbs, sayings, and phrases. Now, for example, you may have heard, especially if you are a South Asian person, that you can't cut your hair on a particular day of the week. You can't cut your nails on a particular day of the week. You shouldn't visit the temple on these days, and so on. There are these rules, and it's not just a family rule or a family proverb. It might also be a community level proverb and sayings. Now, a lot of times, especially if we look at it from a modern context, we may feel that there is absolutely no scientific basis for why certain rules were there, or why after a certain point in time you can't do a certain thing. Like, for example, you can't cut your nails after 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. in the evening. Based on where you're living in India, you may have a version of this at your place. Now, while it doesn't seem like it makes any absolute sense right now, if you think about the practical purpose of these sayings, you realize that in the ancient times they didn't have electricity. So most places in the country would get dark after 5, 6, 7 p.m. And so cutting your nails at that time would mean doing so in the dark. And that would be difficult, that would be dangerous. And so they would actively discourage people from doing that particular activity so as to keep them safe. Now, there are so many sayings like this that come down to us from our ancestors, right? And a lot of these things go beyond the practical as well. Now, you can figure out or make a list of all the sayings and proverbs that you've been hearing all of your life, or that your friends have been hearing all of their lives, and then you can try to research about the historical background behind it. Now, at the end of the day, the reason I'm stressing on the historical and scientific and practical background is because folk magic, just like any other magical practice, works on correspondences. Now, correspondences are basically, I'm going to be doing a video about that some other day, and I will link it up here once I do make such a video. But correspondences are essentially the meaning or the representation of ideas. For example, okay, let's take salt for example. Now, salt represents protection in many forms of magic. Now, why is that? Now, the basic reason is because salt is essentially an ingredient that contains a lot of protective values. It helps you with scrub your skin and remove all the toxins and old skin cells. And if you ingest salt, especially pink salt, rock salt, it has a lot of nutrients that protect you, that give you more immunity, and therefore they protect you, and so on. So there are a lot of correspondences that are present. So that's why I want to stress on the importance of understanding the practical and scientific reasons, the historical reasons of your family sayings, community sayings, childhood stories, so that you can distill the correspondences that are associated with each of these sayings and each of these stories. And when you want to craft spells, when you want to practice folk magic, you will be able to, you'll have your ready-made list of correspondences that you can use to whip up a spell in a jiffy and spread the magic around the world. So yeah, so that's the second tip, your family sayings. Tip number 3, community legends. All right, yep. So we are moving pretty much within the community and family circle right now, and that's again because folk magic is all about the magic practiced by your community. And a lot of the communities around the world, especially indigenous communities, have legends. For example, so I grew up in Karnataka, and there was a legend from quite some time about a ghost in Karnataka that would try to come into people's houses and suck their souls. Now, the only way to defeat this ghost was to tell it to come back the next day. And so people in a lot of villages and even in the urban areas up until the early 1990s, in fact, this used to happen even till then, people would write a phrase called Nale Ba. Nale Ba basically means come tomorrow. Nale means tomorrow, Ba means come in Kannada. So come tomorrow. And when the ghost would come in front of your house and see this phrase written, come tomorrow, it would realize that it was not welcome, that it was not invited in, because it had to be invited into the house, and therefore it would decide to come tomorrow. But since you've written it permanently, either in paint or in ink or whatever it is, the ghost would come every day to your house and get turned away at the gate because you would never invite it in, and therefore your soul would be protected and intact and your family members would be safe. So this Nadeba is actually and the story of this ghost, this legend, is very local to the state of Karnataka where I grew up. And there will be a lot of legends that are local to this place that you have grown up in, that your city, your village, your state, your country, your community people, so look for these legends, because these legends really give you a lot of insight about the beliefs of your community, and a lot of these beliefs will contain information about how to keep evil spirits away and how to invite deities and ancestral spirits and positive energies into your life. And isn't that what magic and spell work is all about? Keeping negativity away and bringing goodness into your life towards you and the people you love, right? Protection, prosperity, abundance, love, manifesting your goals. That's what magic is about. And these community legends contain so much information about how our ancestors used to manifest their goals, whether it was keeping away negative energies or inviting in positive ones. So read through your community legends. Moving on to the next step, which is books on folk tales. So I have actually done another video where I've talked about the 10 best books to read to practice Indian magic, and I'm going to link it up somewhere up here. And so do check that out. But folk tales of your entire nation, sources of magic. These books really help. Now, I know I've been talking so much about stories and legends in the previous three, but those were basically looking at your own personal experiences as you grew up. Now, what if there are situations where some people may not have access to elders who could give them this information? They may not be able to access ancestral information through their own lineage. And in that case, books like these really help. So for example, The Blue Lotus by Meena Arora Nayak is a great book to explore so many of the myths, folklore and tales of India. Now this book has, it covers not just Hindu myths and folklore, but the myths and folklore of all religions practiced in India. And that's saying a lot, because India is such a religiously diverse country. So books like these can really help you manifest, or rather to gain information about your country's magical practices, because a lot of these folk tales contain spells, a lot of these folk tales contain rituals, and they contain instructions on how to manifest certain goals. And so these books can really be of great use when you're trying to study material related to your country and you don't have an elder or an ancestor through whom you can actually gain this information directly. So this book is a great one for if you are in India or if you are in South Asia. And I would really stress this if you're in South Asia, because at the end of the day, all South Asian countries were considered as a single unit in India. So a lot of these folk tales traverse boundaries into what would today be called Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Nepal. So if you're in any of the South Asian countries, this book is a great one to choose. Continuing with books, we have another tip that we'd like to discuss, or rather, which I would like to share, is books on local philosophy. Now, if you look at this entire library that I have, this is just one part of my library, but all of these books over here, they are the philosophical texts that are there in Hinduism, that are, the translated version of these philosophical texts. And the reason that I picked this up is because I really want to study the tenets of my religion to really understand what it is without having the bias of politicians and other people who have combined their power-hungry ideologies with religion. Because let's face it, religion is a great tool to both bring people together but also to tear people apart. And a lot of political parties, especially in India, do a lot of vote bank politics with religion as a key tool, where they use religion to tear people apart. So anyways, coming back to magic. So these philosophical texts, they are the complete unabridged translations of the critical editions of the manuscripts that are still present today. So when I say critical editions, I'm referring to versions of these philosophical texts that are the oldest version of these philosophical texts that are currently in existence. So they're not the oldest, they're not the originals, because the originals were once again told in oral format and not in written format. And so these are basically whatever has been left behind from the oldest existing written format of our philosophical texts. It's a direct translation of that. And I usually choose Bibek de Broy. And if you want, I'll put up Bibek de Broy's Ramayana book review that I had done up here somewhere, so you can check it out. So I've read those three, but I'm yet to read the others. So these philosophical books will give you a lot of information about your community and your folks' rituals and practices. Like, for example, did you know, Desi folks, especially Desi Hindu folks, that the Atharva Veda is actually a book of spells? I didn't know that until I did my research. So the Atharva Veda is one of the 4 Vedas. I'm not going to go into the whole concept of what Vedas are, but it's one of the 4 Vedas that are the cornerstones of Hindu philosophy. And the Atharva Veda, which is the 4th book in the series, is actually a book of spells. It's a magical manual. Go figure, right? So I'm trying to get my hands on that right now. So if anybody knows where I can get one, so please do let me know. So yeah, you know what? Go through your philosophical texts. Trust me, you will find a lot of magic there. Especially, I mention this in terms of folk magic because it will be localized to your culture and to your community. All right, moving on to the next step, which is celebrations, local celebrations. And I'm talking about everything from birthdays to marriages to anniversaries to promotions to housewarming ceremonies, to menarches, that is our menstrual cycle celebrations that are very famous, that we do in India in a lot of communities, pregnancies, pre-pregnancy, post-pregnancy, both. The child's tooth arrival ceremony, the child's first haircut. There are so many practices that, especially if you are in South Asia, you would know this, right? And I'm sure a lot of indigenous communities have such religions, have such celebrations. Now, a lot of these celebrations actually involve invoking spirits, asking for blessings, and manifesting whatever it is that we wanted. And a lot of these spells are actually a part and parcel of the steps and processes that are done during these celebrations. Study your local celebrations, your local festivals. They will have so many rituals and so many spells involved in them that if you actually start studying the nuances of these practices, you will be able to find hundreds of spells and hundreds of rituals within them. And you can actually break them apart and modify them for your own specific purposes. Another tip that you can use to learn more about the folk magic customs of your community is songs. Now, you'll see this especially in rural areas or places where a lot of manual labor is done, especially in terms of South Asia. I'm not really familiar how it works in other countries. So when people are involved in a lot of manual labor and it's very mind-numbingly boring, let's say, a lot of these, in these professions, you will see the people, the workers, singing folk songs. One person starts the tune and the other people follow, they are the chorus, and they'll sing about different things, from the life of women in their community to social atrocities, to heroes, and to lot of the mythologies, to a lot of witches, to spell work, and so on. And in these songs you will see a lot of how how the good versus evil play out, how the oppressed defeated the oppressor using certain tools. Either it could be physical tools or it could be magical tools, it could be a genie, it could be a wish, and so on. And these folk songs that people sing, they carry so much wisdom, they carry so much magical information. So listening to these folk songs, getting access to these folk songs, meeting people who remember the songs of the past, because let's face it, there are very few and far between right now, right? Finding these and documenting these will give you a lot of information about where you can source your folk magical information from. Now, another place where you can seek folk magical information is through artisanal work. And I'm talking about artisanal work by local communities, indigenous tribes, and the local artisans in your place or in any other place in your country. Like, for example, take this for example. So this is actually something that I found that was made by tribal people in the region of Uttar Pradesh, which is one of the states in India. And one of the tribes had made this necklace. And I buy a lot of artwork which is actually very local to different parts of India. Like, for example, this artwork that you see here, these two women, is actually a series of 3 paintings that I purchased from an indigenous tribal artist from West Bengal. And this artwork is very relevant to the style of paintings that her community does. Now, the reason I say that you need to look towards artisanal work, artisanal craftsmanships for your folk magic information is because, especially in the case of South Asia, a lot of our folklore, a lot of our magic, a lot of our spell work has been intermingled with art and creativity, and they've transformed onto and they've transferred onto the canvas. You will see a lot of magical events playing out in the form of paintings. You will see a lot of the motifs on not just jewelry and paintings, even things like clothes. Like, for example, saris are very good examples in the South Asian specific culture. Saris are excellent examples of where you can find local motifs for folk magic, right from mango leaves printed on the pallu to peacocks to conch shells to the entire Ramayana and Mahabharata printed on the sari. You get so many motifs which are extremely ingrained in the magical practices of the local community. Look towards these evidences that you will see in your day-to-day life. I mean, if you live in India and if your parent wears a sari, just go to the cupboard and pick one out. You will see so many motifs on there. If you wear jewelry that you have sourced from indigenous artists, take a closer look at them and figure out why they use certain things. Like, for example, why is there a bell on this one? Why this particular stone or crystal? Why not the other one? You will see that there are specific choices that are made, and a lot of these indigenous jewelry and saris and other artwork that they use have specific symbolism. Like, they wear a specific shaped bangle on certain occasions because it has a certain correspondence. It could be it could be fertility, it could be a protection, it could be prosperity, and so on. When you study the motifs and the heritage of each of these items that are very local to us, you will figure out how you can infuse magic into your life. So, for example, glamour magic is an excellent practice where you can infuse these. If you know for information why a particular jewelry uses, let's say, or rather, let's say a particular jewelry that you have purchased, something like this, contains rose quartz. Now, rose quartz, as you know, is a great tool for both self-love and attracting romantic love. And so you can, if you have a specific intention, let's say maybe you're going out on a date, you really like this person, and you want to make this date kind of become more permanent, maybe move towards a long-term commitment, wearing that jewelry which was made using that specific ingredient, which is rose quartz, will intensify your intention, and it will energize your magic and ensure that you get what you want. And this is just one example that I'm saying. Or, for example, you wear something like tiger's eye, maybe a dress which has a tiger motif on it, maybe a sari which has a tiger motif on it, or a tie which has, let's say, stripes that look similar to that of a tiger's. Now, tiger's eye, tiger's power, tiger's creativity, and especially when it comes to India, the tiger is also a symbol of overcoming obstacles and achieving your goals. So you can use these items to wear them, and it becomes a power symbol, right? It helps impress someone. It helps you break through the barriers that are preventing you from getting a job, and it'll help you manifest the job, manifest the promotion, and bring it into reality. So these are some ways in which you can actually implement some of these tools and practice folk magic, because a lot of these motifs, like I said, are based in folklore, which once again, folklore are based in your community's magical practices. Now, for the final tip that I have in terms of where you can find information to practice folk magic is field guides. Now, field guides basically are any guides to local plants, local animals, local geographical anomalies, and so on. So, for example, if you pick up a book on local herbs, that's a local field guide. If you pick up a book on local mammals or local birds, that's your field guide. Now, why do I specify field guide? Now, if you have been a magical practitioner, and especially if you've been a green magic practitioner, you'll have heard of people like Scott Cunningham, Amy Blackthorn, and so many of the other people like this who practice green magic. Now, all of these people, while they're amazing, I do have a lot of their books, they are once again North American practitioners, and the herbs that they mention are local to North America. We may find some of them in India, but most of them need to be imported. So instead of making your magic unfeasible and expensive, why not use your local field guides to understand your local botanicals, your local animal spirits, and your local geographies, so that you can work with the land that you were born on or with the land that you're living on and make magic more effective. So these field guides are exceptionally great because they teach you a lot of things. They give you the history and evolution of whatever plant or animal that you're studying. They tell you about the different characteristics from the time of their birth to the time of their death. They tell you about the different cycles and seasonal shifts that they undergo, and they tell you about where you can find them. And also, most importantly, this is the most important part, whether they're poisonous or they're safe. And that is very important because if you are a practicing magician, you want to use some herbs, you need to know whether this herb is poisonous or not. You need to know if you can touch it, you need to know if you can use it, and you need to know if you need to just leave it the hell alone, right? Similar with animals, insects, and so on. So use your local field guides. When you have done all of the research by using all of the other tips that I provided, like local sayings, household stories, community legends, books on folk tales and folklores, books on philosophy, so on. Once you've used all this information and you have certain idea about the spells and rituals that are local to your community, use your field guide to fill in the gaps. Use your field guide to customize the spell or the working that you want to do, so that your magical practice can be holistic and it can be homegrown. So yeah, there you go. Top tips for practicing folk magic. Alright, so this brings me to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I tried to give you as many tips as I could, and of course I will be making more videos on folk magic and other types of magic, and even elaborating on a lot of the things that I actually discussed with you right now, because I want to give you the best information that I can. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found some value, and I hope you're able to really get in touch with your roots and practice magic your way. I hope you all have a fabulous day, and I will see you on the next episode, or rather next, I know, right? I told you I wouldn't use the word episode in the previous one, but hey, I'll see you in the next video on Nishagni Tarot, where you receive inspired insights to create an empowered life. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.